Welcome back to Thronefall. I last time thoroughly enjoyed the game, and while I was obviously chatting up a little too much, maybe, but it was quite a bit of fun. So we're gonna try this again. It might be quite a bit of less chatting, more playing, because again I am playing a controller, which is making it a little bit of a harder thing. I for myself, I'm not used to this at all. And all right, let's see what we want. It seems as though that seems like a really great perk to get. And towers and mint, I don't know how much that affects our gameplay. Now I actually haven't, at least if I have, I don't remember playing this level at all, so I don't actually know how hard this is. So I kind of feel like almost, because if you look at the quests in the bottom left, it looks like just doing this. Let's try that, because I think that'll actually be really good with the royal mint that we have. So let's build ourselves a little bit of a town. Okay, so they're coming from down below. Do I have any good... Okay. Let's then get... I don't even get this one. Oh. Oh, that's... Okay, I just fell off the cliff. Lovely. That's actually a really cool tower. So this should be something that I can get fairly quick, or fairly easily. So I really want to try and get as many houses as possible. In gold mines, it seems as though this is something that I only have 4. That's tough. I should have thought of that beforehand. Well, this should be fine. Let's bring the knight. So this is one that I'm definitely a lot more up close and personal with them. And I don't know what my special ability is. I'm assuming a heavy attack that does like some range or something. Oh, it makes me go really fast. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, wow, that just runs through my health like no tomorrow. All right, well, first things first, let's get that all figured out. And do we have another... Yes, we do. We're going to get another tower here. Because, wow, we really are in desperate need of more... Oh, shoot. Why did I do it over there? Oh, no. That's so tough. Anyways. We'll have to see. Because we should automatically... Yeah, I'm going to wait until they're grouped up. And then try... Shoot, yeah, I don't have anything over here. This could have gone so much better. I actually... Oh yeah, this is it for me. That's so tough. You know, maybe it's the fact that I am trying too hard. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. And let's not do any of the mutators. And let's just play a normal game. Okay, so something I think would be beneficial for us to get quickly. It's going to be some of these archers, and ooh. Huh. It's vulnerable against other ranged units, but we haven't seen too many of those. I kind of want to try it. Let's try the hunters, and let's set them up right here. That could be good. And let's just get a lot of houses and this gold mine before I forget. And that should be good. So something that, you know, I obviously enjoy a lot of historical games or medieval games, or games that maybe have that flavor, I guess you could say. And I think part of the reason, okay, I am going to die. Part of the reason I've enjoyed that is just the overall feel of them is really good. And I guess what I mean is that, I mean, the art style is good, the music is good, and I think that's something that I find not just with, you know, obviously like medieval games, but with many historical games, and it's largely due to the fact, at least I think, largely due to the fact of, oh, no, largely due to the fact of the art, music, style that was alive and prevalent during those times. If you look at, for example, the people of Athens, or just ancient Greece as a whole, and you see architecture like no other, and it is stunning architecture. You know, rather pretty art, especially in terms of, you know, what you see for the times. I mean, you know, these are people who focus on art, focus on culture, and I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, the cultural values that you see they have. And obviously, you know, culture doesn't dictate everything in terms of what you see or enjoy or listen to or like. But I think that culture does kind of show what you appreciate in terms of your art and visually. And I think it's a shame that we've seriously moved away from that as a society and as a people. I mean, you look at society, you know, not more than 200 years ago, and there was still this, you know, great value for architecture and art. I mean, you go to Eastern United States and you still get a large feel for kind of the beauty, the raw beauty in nature, or the raw beauty of architecture. I think that's something that we've seriously missed out on in today's day and age. And I think it has a lot to do with, you know, the values that we have on stuff. I remember taking a class in college. It was a contemporary art class, which I was not looking forward to because, as you can imagine, I am not big on the whole contemporary art stuff. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, my professor was great, but something that we were talking about was this idea of the skill within art and how that has changed and developed over time, and how, you know, even as early as, you know, the 1800s, mid 1800s, moving into the 20th century, you had, you know, this really big push for skill, and specifically this idea of, you know, what makes a good artist per se. And that's something that was lost a lot with the whole, you know, this modern art movement that we got. And I don't know if I would go so far as to say that modern art is, well, actually, I will say this. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, I do think that modern art is rather bland, perhaps, is a good way to say it. And it's because that, you know, largely you don't have this focus on, you don't have a focus on skill nearly as much as you do in a lot of other contexts. And that has, you know, largely affected our architecture even. I mean, you look at any major US city and you look at architecture done from, like, you know, the 70s and 80s, and it is ugly. It really is. I'm sorry to say, but there just isn't a lot about it that makes me feel like, oh wow, that's so pretty, or that's so nice. And I think that's, you know, in a large part, an intentional decision that people made with this, in that they felt like, hey, we want function over form. And I understand a little bit of the idea of, you know, this was the modern age of efficiency. And the reason I get that so much is because I am, if you know me at all personally, that is something that I am all about. I mean, mercy, efficiency might as well be my middle name. But if it's at the cost of something like, beauty, I think you just start to see a decline in that which is beautiful and that which uplifts society. It might be bold to claim that beautiful art, like, can make a society moral, because I don't think that is the case. I think that, you know, you do largely see examples of societies that have beautiful art but are not moral per se. Wow. But I don't think that you would be fair to then say, oh yeah, well then we don't need art, because obviously we need art. Obviously that's something that's so very important for us to be able to have art, because it shows what our society values, and whether we want to see it or not, that's the truth. So I think when we look at architecture, we look at art and we see kind of how individuals value different things. It is a real shame that we've lost the value of what beauty is in both architecture and art. I don't know how many of you, I would imagine, just due to just the sheer number of people who know the name or have heard of this guy, but Jackson Pollock. Now, I don't want to go so far as to say that Jackson Pollock has no skill, because I mean, I don't know if I could do half the things that he does, or did. I don't believe he's still alive. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I could be very wrong on that. But anyways, but you look at a lot of the stuff that he was doing, like the drip painting. For those of you who don't know, Jackson Pollock was very big on doing drip paintings. And like the idea of he would get like a paint can and he would hang it over a big canvas and he would kind of like rock it back and forth basically, and would, yeah, just make it drip down, just this paint. And it just has no inherent, oh, that's tough to say, but I do believe it's fair to say it has no inherent skill. Is that harsh to say? Perhaps. But I think that when we have a society that celebrates the abstract to such an extent that you no longer have the ability to enjoy the truly beautiful, I think it is a shame. And it's something that, you know, we would hope we could still appreciate the beauty in life, even without this idea of morality associated with beauty. But I think it's fair to say, nonetheless, that beauty and morality do go hand in hand. And I fully am aware and understand that a lot of this is coming from my understanding and worldview of what beauty is and where that comes from. And I think that is something we often forget, and I do believe to be a truth, is that beauty is directly associated with that which is good. And I mean good in a very more concrete, absolute sense. When you behold something such as a profane image of some sorts, you wouldn't call that beautiful. You would definitely more so say that it's good, but I would actually argue that you might not even say it's good, but either way, when you see like a profane image, you wouldn't say that it is a good thing, even if it's, you know, beautifully executed and it is, you know, done to a good degree, whatever you might say, like the composition of a work is good. I don't think you would still say that it is inherently beautiful. And I think I was talking with my wife earlier today, actually, and we were talking about this idea of how you have this disconnect often within society, that this disconnect of what goodness really is and what beauty really is. And you might say something is perhaps, you know, has good composition. You know, I do photography in my free time, and, you know, I can look at a photo and say, hey, yeah, no, that looks like a good photo, or that perhaps has qualities of what you would say is follows different rules of photography or whatnot. But the actual image that you're looking at, it matters far more the content of the image than rather the composition of the image. And I think that's an important thing when you look at, you know, art and architecture as well, that it's not just the matter of having good skill within your art. I mean, you can have great skill, but your art can be of very dark and profane things, and you wouldn't call it beautiful. You might call it compelling, and I'll give you that. You might call it compelling, but I don't think you would call it beautiful. And I think that that's kind of where I find my issue with modern architecture, modern artwork, whatever you might say falls under that realm. And that is, yes, we might have stuff that is compelling. Whether or not you think modern art is compelling or not, I'm not going to say, because I think everyone has some very different opinions on that. But I think it's imperative to understand that certain aspects of what we behold in our day-to-day life should be subject to a very specific rule set or guidelines for what we might esteem to be beautiful. I think if you were to leave society to its own vices and say, and let them define that which is beautiful or pretty or whatever you might say, and say that it's each individual choice. And I understand the famous old adage that the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And yes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but the beholder has a set of standards that you can't really argue with. I was talking with actually a surgeon recently, or I guess this was a little while ago, but we were talking about this idea of how when they were in school, they actually had to take a art class, or basically an art class. It was a sculpting class though, and it was this idea of that you had to understand human proportions to understand what people were looking for when they said, hey, like, I want you to do this to me or this to me to make me look beautiful. But while I was talking with a friend about this, he did point out the fact that, hey man, yes, you might be able to say, hey, there are look, there are certain standards that we have for what is beauty, that might be a cultural thing, and I understand that. But there are certain things that I feel like are pretty unalienable when it comes to the cultural differences of the world, of what is beautiful or not beautiful. And I think that in as much as that's talking about like people, that you have that idea when it comes to architecture. You can have people who have lived in, take Japan, for example, their whole lives, and they can look at Greek architecture and say, wow, that is beautiful. And I think that's something that we need to realize and need to accept the fact that, hey, it's not a bad thing to have things that we might call beautiful, things we might call good. And we should focus on that. We should remember that things have definitive beauty, and that is not a bad thing. All this is to say, man, I miss old architecture. I think it's funny when people, they look at, today's day and age, and they say like, man, aren't we so glad that we live in a society like we do today? Or, they might complain about the actual society it is. But I think something that we just so often neglect in terms of having this conversation about what society should look like is the fact of, hey, what happened to art, architecture, and beauty when we look at the world today and we try to say what our world should look like. I think that we should keep in mind that our world should look beautiful, that what we should value is, yes, a robust, healthy economy. Like, yes, having, all these different beautiful things that, Western society has created, but also we should focus on ensuring that what we're doing today lasts for tomorrow. I saw a quote that the reason we think the architecture of yesterday was so beautiful is that they were building with tomorrow in mind. And I think that's such an interesting idea, that if we keep in mind that, hey, what we're building today, tomorrow's generation will look at and will use as a metric for what is beautiful, I think we care a whole lot more about what we're building, what we're painting, and the art that we are creating. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember. Do I think I am an expert on art? Well, no, by no means. I have taken literally a single class in college about art, and I don't think that qualifies me whatsoever for what it means, you know, to have good art. But I do think that it is up to the society that we live in, the culture that we have and are creating for ourselves, to say, hey, we can decide as individuals who don't have art degrees, who haven't studied art history, to decide what we believe is beautiful and to make those ideals something that is a deep part of who we are. And I think that is a good and admirable thing, to say the least. But thanks for thanks for tagging along and watching. And I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because obviously it's just me here ranting my thoughts and ideas. But I'm sure you guys have some really good points to bring up, and I'd love some kind of feedback, some conversation here, and a little bit of the, you know, back and forth, because something that I've realized is that I do a lot better in conversation when I have someone to kind of push back upon me. And I would truly appreciate if you guys, you know, dropped in the comments kind of your thoughts on this, about art, beauty, what you think, you know, is important or isn't important, and maybe where I got it wrong. And I'm sure there are things that I said that I didn't realize. So I was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. And so I'd appreciate some feedback on this. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments about this stuff. And yeah, let me know what you guys want to kind of hear, what you guys want to talk about, and what you want to see in the future. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy. Hit that like and that subscribe button. It's completely free and it helps me out a ton. And I will see you guys next time.